Who's gonna make a loom knit pullover? You are, today on Good Knit Kisses. Welcome to Good Knit Kisses. We're all about helping you stitch your love and love your stitches. Are you ready to make your first pullover sweater on the knitting loom? Well, I am ready to show you. This is the needle knit version and I have converted it to make it on the knitting loom. We're working with the KB looms, the Flexi loom. So it's really cool and flexible. It works like circular needle knit. And this one is the needle knit version of the easygoing knit pullover from yarnspirations.com. And I'm going to show you how to make it for you. We are not going to be doing side-by-side comparisons of needle versus loom. We are actually writing it all out for you. In fact, we will have all the information you need down at the link below, and we're going to go week by week and release the instructions for each part of the design as we go so that you're not overwhelmed with too much information. I'm going to give you all the information that you need to get started. We will have schematics or the diagrams of the panels and the sizes that you need so you can make a good informed decision. However, we're going to be releasing these as we work on it. I've already started on my sweater or pullover, and if you are in the UK, you probably refer to this just as a jumper. So in the US, we call it a sweater. So if you hear me say sweater, that's what it is. Otherwise, it's a pullover design, and it goes top down. You just pull it over your head. It is a drop sleeve, so you can see that the sleeve is dropped down here, so it's going to be further down than your shoulder. So sleeve lengths are not from the edge of the shoulder down, they're a little bit further down off of the shoulder, so just be aware of that. It is a more forgiving type of size. It has a lot of ease to it. When you look at your sizing to pick out that particular size, you want to look at your fitted bust measurement and the actual measurement. I would recommend taking an existing favorite shirt or sweater that you have or pullover that you have and go ahead and take some measurements from that, and that way you can understand what size might be the best for you to look at. Now, the numbers I'm going to look at and talk about on video will be in inches. However, if you're using the metric system, we will also have that information as well. So let's go over some of the things that you're going to need and supplies, and then I'm going to have a small tutorial in here about the swatch. Now, you will need to swatch. Sorry, maybe a dirty word for some, but you will need to swatch. This is an easy pattern, and I will go over everything that you need, so have no fear. Also, I'm going to talk to you about the top here, the cowl or the collar, and we're going to give you a few different options if you want to customize it for yourself. Say you don't like this tall, long cowl here. Maybe you want to have it open, make a button part to it. Maybe you want to have it short. It's actually worked in a flat panel back and forth and then connected together. But if you want to make it in the round, I'm going to show you how to do that as well. So I do want to show you also that we have a link to the hat that I made several years ago to go along with it. So if you want to make the hat as well, we will include links below for that too. All right, let's begin on all the things that you need, and then we'll dive into the tutorial to get you started. For the knitting loom, you're going to need a 5/8 inch gauge, that's center peg to center peg measurement, and you'll need at least 63 to 97 pegs. Now, we are using this loom here. This is from Knitting Board or KB Looms, and it's called the Flexi Loom, and it has enough of these links in here to make the extra small sweater that you see here, or the medium. You will need to have 2 boxes of them if you're going to make the large, the extra large, the 2 or 3 XL, and the 4 or 5 XL. All right, so this one right here is 32 links, and this will make the smallest size. If you want to see it with the knitting on here, you can see how nice and flexible it is. I've already bound off a few stitches. This is actually my back panel here, and you can see how well this has managed. It goes in my bag really easy, and it works similar to circular needles. All right, let's get into the yarn you need. Burnout roving. That is the yarn we're going to use. That's what we got the pattern calling for. We need a bulky 5-weight yarn, and if you want to substitute that, whether it's for color, or you just don't want to work with a roving type yarn, I totally understand. Look at the little part on the ball band that it's a square and it has two needles crossing each other. This one is a 6.5 millimeter or a US 10.5 size, which is actually what the needle knit version of this sweater was originally. And this says 12 stitches in the sample. That's a 4-inch sample, so that's identical to what gauge we had gotten before. So that's what you need for the yarn, and let me go over how many balls you need and what sizes we have. All right, let's talk about sizes. I'm going to suggest that you make this sweater for yourself. You can have a friend or trusted family member measure you, or you can try and measure yourself. You're going to take the widest measurement around your bust and then use those numbers. Now that has quite a lot of ease in it, and you'll notice that this is a more generous type of sweater. It's just kind of a cozy, comfy, non-fitted sweater. So it's going to have a lot more room in it for ease for you. So I'm going to kind of read off to the side if you don't mind. So the extra small is 28 to 34 inches, the fit measurement, or 41 inches finished. And you're going to need 9 balls for that. You can also add in an extra number to this, 1 extra ball or skein to it. That'll give you enough to make the hat afterward, or you have something just in case something's wrong with the ball and you need to make sure that you have everything in the same die lot. Okay, so let's do the other sizes. The medium is a fit measurement of 36 to 38 inches, and the finished measurement is 44 inches. You're going to need 10 balls for that one. The large is 40 to 42 inches. The fit measurement on the large is 48 inches, and you'll need 11 balls for that one. The extra large is a fit measurement of 44 to 46 with a 52-inch measurement for the finish, and then the balls are going to be 12. You're going to need 12 skeins or balls for that. The 2 or 3XL is a fit measurement of 48 to 54 inches with the finished bust size of 60 inches. And then that one you're going to need 14 balls. And then the 4 or 5XL is 56 to 62 inches. And then that one has a little bit less ease in it. That one is 64 inches for the finished bust, and you'll need 16 balls. Again, add 1 extra ball or skein to the number for that. Now that goes with this yarn size that we have here. This is a 100-gram ball, 3.5 ounces, and it has 120 yards or 109 meters. So you can do the math on that and find out how many yards that is total, multiplied times how many balls I told you, and then you can divide that up by the number of yards or meters that is in the substitute if you get a substitute yarn. So that's how you would calculate that. Okay, you're also going to need, as far as supplies, a handful of stitch markers. That's going to help you when we start shaping your sleeve. That's the main shaping that happens in the pattern, and so I suggest that you have those to kind of mark where your increases are, or you can just keep track on the side. You may not necessarily want to use a whole bunch of stitch markers, so those are just for your extra benefit. You're also going to want some extra scrap yarn to hold extra stitches or some kind of stitch holder off to the side, and then you'll probably want an extra yarn. If you're using the roving type yarn, I would suggest using a yarn that's more smooth and matches, to use it for sewing the seams together. I actually used a brown contrasting yarn so you can see it in the video, but the way that I stitch it together, you can't actually see it. So if you have trouble finding the right match for your yarn, it's okay. It should be hidden, but try and get something as close to the original color as possible. All right, grab your supplies and we're going to begin casting on our swatch. All right, let's begin our cast on. You need 17 pegs, so you get 16, so 8 pairs, and then put an extra one on. You just simply pop it and snap it on, and we'll use all but one of these pegs. If you've got too many, just simply tilt them like this and pop it right off. It works really well. Okay, so you're going to cast on from this direction over here, and then the 17th peg stop, and that is where we begin row 1. You can do it left to right, right to left, and you'll see the video for the right and left down in the links below in our description. I'm going to show you a couple of cast-ons. The double E-wrap cast-on you're probably familiar with. You're just going to put it on your first peg, And all you do is wrap that one more time where that slip knot is and knit over, tighten, and then move on to the next one. Double E wrap on the next peg, lift over, tighten, and move on. If you want to do the cable cast on, or the true cable cast on, you can have your slip knot, and for the next one, you just you wrap that, kind of go from the back, go in the direction you're moving, in between the two pegs, wrap around, and then we're going to make a loop, go from underneath the existing loop and pull downward and make a new loop, flip it and place it onto your loom, and then take your working yarn in between those two pegs and pull on it to tighten. Okay? Go around the back of the peg that you just did, and then we're going to pull downward. So go underneath the existing loop, pull downward to make a new one, and then flip it and place it onto the next peg. Tighten it up and move on. So go ahead and cast on with either one of those all the way to peg number 17. And I'm going to show you how to do the long tail cast on, which is what I used. Now the long tail cast on does look a little bit loopy when it first gets started, and you will need to tighten it up. If you need a tightening up video, I can show that in the very end of our sweater. But if you're not familiar with it, you just need to make sure that you're following along and really pulling each and every stitch. You want to make sure not to pull parts of the fiber, or else it can wreck it. So if you're more comfortable with double E-wrap or true cable, then do that one. For the long tail cast on, you're going to want to leave a little bit of a tail and measure out 3 times the width that you're going to cast on here. So I'm going to go from peg 1 to 17, go 1, 2, 3, and then that's where I make my slip knot. And then we place that on our peg and tighten it up. Okay. And then you're going to unit wrap with the what's on the ball. Okay. And then tighten that up. And then with the tail part, that's what you're going to put towards you. So tail is towards you, and you'll E-wrap the peg. So the tail is only wrapping the peg first, and then what's coming from the ball is going to be a U-wrap knit. And so just knit that over, it'll be loose, and then tug on it to make it tighter. So E-wrap with the tail, U-wrap with the ball, knit over, and continue until you have 17 stitches. Go ahead and work that. Pause your video. When I meet you back up, we'll start on row 1 of the ribbing. See you soon. Okay, if you worked with the long tail cast on, you can go ahead and cut it. Make sure you have 6 inches there, and your tail will be at the other side if you worked with the other 2 cast-ons. So for row 1, you want to simply U-wrap knit and lift up and over. Okay, so just a U-wrap knit, and then we're going to alternate and make a purl stitch. So this is a knit, purl, knit, purl. You're going to begin and end with a knit stitch. Do not use an E-wrap. It's not going to be the right size for you. It's going to be kind of bulky looking, and so stick with a true knit stitch or a U-knit stitch. A flat knit is not recommended either for sizing. I used a U-wrap knit the entire time, and it worked out really well. So go ahead and do that and end in a knit stitch. Pause your video, and I'll meet you at the end. See you soon. All right, you finished row 1. Go ahead and repeat row 1, starting with knit, purl, go all the way down to the end with a knit, and that will complete the second of your rows. You're going to make about 8 rows, so you're going to end up on this side over here, and it should be about 2 inches, but it will be kind of stretched out. So you can pull downward on it, and I'll show you what mine looks like, and when we come back, we'll start working on the textured stitch. See you soon. As you can see in my sample here, it's really stretched out on the loom, okay? But the sample back here is nice and relaxed. That's because it stretches on the loom and it relaxes when it's taken off. When it's taken off, then I get the 2 inches that I actually need. So if you'll trust me and keep with the 8 rows, then you should be fine. If you decide that you need to add a few more rows, that's fine, but it needs to end up on this side over here, okay? So whether you're doing 6 or 8 or 10 rows, then make sure that your yarn ends up on this side. And now let's begin our textured stitch, just like this one here. This is the texture pattern. This is the main stitch pattern that you see throughout the sweater. It's a 4-row repeat. The first row is a setup row to get it ready for the stitch pattern that makes it have this ridge here. This is a purl one below. And then the next 2 rows, 3 and 4, are all knit stitches. So let's start our pattern. Want to make sure that your yarn is on this side. And I'm going to hold my yarn in this hand, and I'm going to show you how to make sure that your gauge is nice and loose. It's not too tight. Go ahead and work the first stitch, a U-wrap knit, and then hold your yarn in the back with your tool, and then go ahead and yarn over the next peg. So we've knit 1, and then we're going to slip with the yarn in front of the peg, and then continue on in knit 1, slip with the yarn in front of the peg. So in order to knit the next one without having too tight of a stitch, put your tool back here and hold it. So I'm just holding it right behind that peg, and then I'm going to yarn over this next peg and hold it in the back. Okay, so when I let go, this is nice and loose, and then we're going to knit up and over that stitch. And so this one remains nice and loose. Let's move on. Put our tool behind the peg that we just worked, yarn over on the next one that we want to slip with the yarn in front of the peg, put our tool back there and hold it, yarn over the next peg where we want to knit 1, and then knit over, and it remains nice and loose. Hold our tool back there, put the yarn over, hold it back there, and then yarn over and knit, and continue on. So you can see that these retain their extra looseness, and then these aren't too tight either. It remains really gauged and really nice and loose. It's not too tight. So continue all the way down, and then when you get to your last stitch, you're just going to knit that. So the first and last peg is knit, and then every other peg is slip with the yarn in front. Pause your video, and I'll meet you for row 2. All right, row 2, we're going to purl 1. So purl 1, and then we want to purl 1 below. And here, because it's already set up, it looks like purl 2 together, but it's not. So we're just going to pull up, make a new loop, pull off both the old loops, and put the new loop on, tighten that up. And then the next stitch is knit. So our pattern is going to repeat with purl 1 below. Okay, so purl 1 below has both those stitches on there. And then knit 1. And then repeat, purl 1 below and knit 1. And you're going to work until the last 2 stitches where you're going to purl 1 below and purl the last stitch. So the first and the last stitch are going to be purl 1. All right, pause your video. Meet me back up for row 3. See you soon. Row 3 and 4 are simply U-wrap knit all the way across and back. So we're just going to U-wrap knit that and continue down and back. So you will finish off your 4-row repeat with the yarn at this side again. All right, so go ahead and repeat those 4 rows to get your textured pattern. And once you've worked about 8 or 9 of those, or about 5 or 6 inches, go ahead and do what's called a provisional bind off. You can just get a scrap piece of yarn and lay it on top here, leave a little bit of a tail over here, and then just go ahead and pull upwards through each loop, pull all that extra yarn through, and do the next one, and pull that all the way through until you get all of the loops with this yarn through it, and then you can take them easily off of the loom. Okay, and once you do that, you'll see that this is really stretched out. Let me show you my sample. Okay, so when you get it off of the loom, this is going to be, here, this is my sample that I actually did. And it will be really stretched out like this, okay? You want to tug on it, okay? You want to tug downward. This is a way for all loom knit samples. They're generally really stretched. They're stretched widthwise, and once they relax, it's actually the way they're truly supposed to be, which is laying this way. Plus, your sweater is going to be pulling downward anyhow. Once you get the tension a little bit more even, then you can go ahead and get your measuring tape and measure this out. And we can measure gauge. So you're going to want to have notes next to you where you can write this out. If you want to write it on your printed pattern, that's great. Go ahead and measure across. Okay, and this is nice and relaxed. You can measure down here. This is about 2 inches for my ribbing. You could write down in your notes that you need 8 rows for 2 inches of ribbing or whatever size you need. And then you can go ahead and measure your length if you like. This one is, I guess I got about 8 inches on this one. Okay, you can't see that up there, but it's about 8 inches. All right, what really matters the most right now is the width here. We want to measure across the width to the outmost where it is. So I'm going to put my 0 here and 6 inches wide. And so now I'm going to get my calculator out and show you some of these numbers. So I've measured 6 inches in my width over here, and I have 17 stitches. So I want to punch in 17 stitches divided by the inches that I measured, which is 6, and that gets 2.83 stitches per inch. Now, if I want to compare that to my 4-inch sample from the gauge in my pattern, we're going to multiply that times 4 inches, and we get 11.33 stitches in that 4-inch piece. So if we want to keep with our inches that are similar in the actual pattern, we want to stick as close with 12 as possible, and this one is at 11. So this one is, or 11.333. You should be fine with sizing as long as they fall within, I'd say, about 2.8 to 3 stitches per inch. So you can change your yarn to get you closer, or you can change your stitch size. So if you're too tight, meaning you have too many stitches, like 3.5 stitches per inch, then you can make your stitches a little bit looser, or you can change the yarn. If your number is too low, that means maybe your knitting is a little bit too loose, so you can tighten the tension up and get it closer to the 3. I suggest trying to get it closer to the 3 stitches per inch as you can, and then that way it should be accurate to the dimensions that we have for casting on. I hope that helped you begin to understand gauge and get that sample done. We're going to join up next week to work on the first part of our sweater and cast on. We'll work on the back panel, and then the following week we'll work on the front panel. Then the next week we'll work on our sleeves. Then after that, we'll work on the collar and starting to piece this thing together. And then the final week, we'll add on the sleeves and sew everything up and finalize it. So it will be 5 parts plus this overview here with the swatch information. Both of the right and the left-handed videos will be available, and all the links will be down below in the video descriptions. For each week we go through it, we'll be sure and add in all those links, and they will take course over the next several weeks. So in order to get those videos, be sure and subscribe to the channel and hit that bell icon so that you know when they come out. You can also click to subscribe on our newsletter if you go to GoodKnitKisses.com and subscribe to it that way, so you can get emailed when those things come out, and we release the pattern every time. In the very end, we will release the entire pattern all together, so if you're someone who wants it all in one place, that will be available to you at that time. If you do want to become a member and have a little bit more one-on-one with us in our private Facebook group, be sure and click the join button in YouTube to do that, and all that is handled through the YouTube system. And we also have weekly Zoom meetings and things like that, and you can ask me questions. So follow along with us. I can't wait to work on your first sweater together here at GoodKnit Kisses. Thanks for joining us today, where we help you stitch your love and love your stitches. See you again soon.